good. Hello, everybody. All right, story time. So, this story dates back to when Brandon was, I want to say 16, probably 16 or 17. I used to work at a summer camp back in Canada. I'm from Canada, for those of you who didn't know that. I moved here from Canada when I was 17, but before that I used to work at a summer camp every summer. And I had a little bit of a reputation at this camp. My camp name was Bauer because back then I used... Cue music. Music to set mood, please. All right. What's mood music? I don't know. What mood music? What should I get? Someone give me a name of a song. I'll put a song on. Oh, I know. Here. Here we go. I like this. This is perfect. Okay, so Brandon, back in the day, used to be a camp counselor. My camp name was Bauer because I used to be a really big fan of Jack Bauer from the TV show 24. And Jack Bauer, for those of you guys who don't know, is a very, very intense character. He's really cool. He's like an anti-terrorist FBI type agent. And Jack Bauer, whenever he would like be all intense, he would talk like all normal, and then whenever he was like in intense mode, like chasing down the bad guy, he'd always go like, "Get in the car!" And I used to be such a big fan. That was like how I would talk whenever I'd do events for the campers and stuff. I'd always get like super intense, and I'd wear like glasses, and I'd have like intense clothing, and I'd be like, "What? Let's play this game. Time to go play volleyball." And I try to talk in like this really intense voice. Anyways, the campers always loved it. The other leaders just never criticized me and were always good friends to me. Anyways, so this one day, I was talking with one of my friends in the dining hall. After all the campers had gone out and they were all like doing some activity, he and I were just talking. And he was like, "Bauer, this guy..." So all the leaders would call each other by our camp names anyways. So this guy, his camp name was Stoked. There's a story behind every name. His camp name was Stoked because he didn't have a name at the end of his picking period, which is like a 2-week period. And he ended up going before the board when they were asking what his name was before the camp started. And he goes, I don't actually have one yet, but I'm stoked to hear what you guys have to have, like what ideas you have. And they're like, "Stoked." Done. And that was like a joke that ended up sticking. And he, yeah. So anyways, so Stoked and I were talking. Stoked's my best friend. And he was like, "Bauer, my campers are so rowdy this session. I know it's only a 2-week session, but these guys, whenever we try to go to bed and I try to tell a story or something to like get them to go to sleep, they won't shut up and they won't go to bed. And we're supposed to go to sleep around like 10:30, like long after it's gotten dark. And they're up until like 1 in the morning, like laughing and joking. And I'm exhausted and they're like keeping me up. And they're not supposed to be up this late anyways. We're supposed to get them to sleep earlier. So I'm like, I got an idea. I got a plan." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Tell a story that involves me. And I'm going to hide outside the chalet." No. Don't tell a story that... No. Don't tell a story that involves me. Tell a scary story. Something that involves, like, a scary guy that lives near the lake. And, like, will come into the camp every now and then. And because the camp doesn't have any walls, they can't keep him out. And it happens once every, like, 5 years or so. And it's always in the news. And Stoked is going, "Oh, I see where you're going like this. This is a good idea." Terrible idea. Anyways, it was a terrible idea. So that night, we finished dinner, finished the snack, had dessert. All the campers were all like stoked and high from the snack because we always did like a brownie or something after like dinner. We do like capture the flag, some cool camp thing, and then they all come back in and get like a brownie. So had the brownie and like a little bit of ice cream or something, and all of them were stoked on sugar, which they're all like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The oldest was like 15, and the youngest were like 10 and 11. They're all guys only camp, by the way. So they all start walking back in the dark. They all have their flashlights and everything. Not a lot of electricity at this camp, so flashlights, walking down the paths in the dark. Multitude of probably like 100 or so of us campers and leaders just walking down the path back to like the bathroom area. get in there, brushing their teeth, and they all go to bed. And so I'm talking to my campers in our cabin, and I'm like, all right, you guys, I'm going to leave you with a friend. And I had a friend who was going to come and watch them for a minute while I was going to do something. He's going to hang with you just for a minute. So hang with him. I'll be back in maybe like 10 minutes or so. So I sneaked over to the back of this other guy's cabin. And these cabins weren't actually cabins. They were chalets. And a chalet does not have solid walls. A chalet has canvas flap walls, meaning there's actually no protection from the outside. So they just pull up, you just lift them up, and you walk right into the cabin, no problem. So I sneaked around to the side, and I was listening. And I kind of like made a whistle or something, and that was the signal for Stoke to start his story. And he goes, all right, everybody quiet down, time for bed. I got a good story for you guys tonight. And they're like, yeah, Stoke, we want to hear your story. He like gets ready for this story. He's like, all right, calm down. He tells everyone to kill their flashlights except for one. He keeps it on himself. He's like, this is a scary story. And everyone's like, campers love scary stories. Campers love any story, but especially scary stories. So he gets the flashlight on himself, and he goes, it was a dark, stormy night. Almost like this one, except it was storming. And this was 3 years ago, here at boys camp. There's a man who lives across the lake. Nobody knows exactly who he is, but some say he was a criminal that was never convicted. He was caught and arrested, and he was arrested for murder. But they never were able to charge him because they didn't have enough evidence. And so everyone's always kind of avoided him a little bit and kind of like tried to stick away from him and like tried to keep their distance because they don't know if he's actually dangerous or not. Yeah, I changed the song. That was kind of killing the mood, wasn't it? So this man, every now and then, he thinks, I'm going to go explore around the lake. And he always knows that there are a lot of campers over at boys camp, and he's never been caught doing anything. So the camp has never ever had any officials going to stop him or talk to him. So they just let him be. He's an older guy. He's probably not that dangerous, but there's always a lot of suspicion about him. So 3 years ago, now if I tell you guys this story, you can't tell your parents. Now that is a signature line. If a camper says that, if a camp counselor says that to a camper, you know he's mad trolling. He's about to tell something that is wildly not true. But none of the campers ever know that. So you guys can't tell your parents about this, okay? So this guy 3 years ago was here at the camp. I kid you not. He came by one day in the middle of lunch and walked by the outside. No, but he didn't come in, like in the dining hall. He just looked in like through the window. And only like me and a few other leaders noticed it. And we didn't say anything because we didn't want to scare all the campers, but we knew it was that same guy from across the lake. And so we didn't know what to do. We told our supervisor, and he was like, don't worry about it. The guy's probably not that dangerous. And so we didn't do anything about it. But it was so weird and creepy how he just looked in the window. And it wasn't like he was just looking in to see what was going on. He was looking in at the campers. And so, you know, of course, this time, all the campers were dead silent listening to this story. And so Stoke keeps going. And later that night, he came back. And it was so unexpected. It was horrible, actually. Because what he did was he came in the middle of the night when it was dark and waited until the camp was getting kind of quiet, right around like story time. Actually, now that you think of it, kind of like right now. And all the campers. And Stoked keeps going. And he was caught walking around the cabins. And what happened was he visited the one that was kind of on the end and the furthest away on the edge of camp. He must have walked all the way around the entire lake by himself for whatever reason, but he visited the one that was on the very end. And because the canvas flaps aren't sealed, he lifted up the flap and he grabbed one of the campers. And he pulled the camper out and actually like picked him up. It was one of the younger campers, so he was fairly light. Grabbed him and actually ran off into the forest. The camper was screaming, and so of course, when this happened, all of the leaders who were nearby jumped up and we sounded the alarm, and we were able to finally find the camper. We found him probably like almost a mile away from where camp was. just alone, crying, screaming for help. I guess the old guy had gotten too tired to keep carrying him and just let him go, but that was the closest call we've had to a camper dying or disappearing and not coming back, and that was horrible. And that was 3 years ago. And before that, it was every 3 years that the guy would come and visit the camp without incident. No one ever stopped him because he never did anything. But that year was the first year that something happened. And they went to go visit his house the next day, and he wasn't there. And they have been a few times since, but he's never there anymore. And they don't know where he is. And so this is actually the 3rd year since that happened. And right at this moment, I was getting ready because, I was sitting right next to the cabin. And Stoke goes, so every now and then, us leaders will still do a circle at night to make sure everything's quiet and there's no movement. Because he might come back. And then he stops his story and he's just silent. And that's my cue. And all the campers are like, and I think someone says like, what if he's coming back tonight? And Stoke's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if Basco over there went and did his rounds. I don't know if he's here tonight. And the campers are like, they're like grabbing their sleeping bags around their faces. And all I do is I scratch. I scratch just along the edge of the cabin. Just a little bit. Just like a little bit of a scratch. And I could hear like a gasp or two. And someone goes, Stoked, he's here! And Stoked laughs. And he goes, no, guys, he's not here. It's just a story. And then I scratch again. Just along the edge of the wood. And someone goes, oh my gosh, Stoked, he's here! And I grab the edge. The edge of the flap that's like on the end of the cabin. I reach down and grab it. And then I rip it straight open with a flashlight. And I go, Wah! And everyone goes, ah! They're screaming their heads off. But, and it was totally successful. It was so funny. Stoked and I like high-fived and we were like, yeah, I got you guys. They were screaming and laughing. Some of them were laughing, but one of them ended up crying. Hey, now the music kind of changes to a whatever. So Stoked was laughing, I was laughing, and one of the campers was crying so hard he wet his bed. So we felt bad about that because then we had to actually like grab his sleeping bag and we had to go swap him out for one of the spare ones because that happens from time to time, but still is so funny. And we got him so good. And then after that, they were too scared to like stay awake, and so they just ended up going to sleep. And then the rest of that session, for like the rest of that week, they would go to sleep at a normal time. So I made a kid cry. I felt terrible, but it was still so funny and so worth it. Legendary story. I made him wet his bed, yeah. 11-year-old kid. Whatever. It was funny. It was also very successful. The kid went to sleep. I bet you could say he was pretty stoked with your performance. Oh my gosh. Stoked hated Stoked jokes, and we always made them. We were like walking back to dinner or something, or walking towards dinner. Dinner bell would go, oh, hey, I'm stoked to go to dinner. And he'd always go, ugh. That was his noise. Ugh. Whenever we make a joke about that. So that is my story. Thank you for paying attention for as long as you did. Time to get back into a little bit of solo